Hey y'all, my name is Ann Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Workforce 4.0. This is your host, Ann Wyatt. I'm so excited to be coming to you all from Horn, USA, here in Franklin, Tennessee today, on site with Michael Maxwell, the operations manager of Horn. Michael's here today to share a little bit more about the process that makes this awesome manufacturing facility so unique. And we are coming to you from the new training room inside the plant. So this has been a really cool experience today, Michael. I really appreciate it. I've gotten a plant tour. I've seen all of the products and all of that cool stuff. I've seen the process, and it's just been really cool checking out your innovation here at Horn USA. But for those that are not as familiar with yourself or with Horn, do you want to just do a quick introduction of yourself?
I'm Michael Maxwell. I'm our operations manager here at Horn USA. Horn USA is a subsidiary of Paul Horn GmbH, which is a carbide cutting tool manufacturer in Germany. As the operations manager, we have three main business units. We have sales, which is really primarily outside sales. Then we have our production, which is managing our manufacturing here at Horn USA, and then operations, which is our technical, engineering, administrative services, marketing, customer service. So those are really what I oversee here at Horn USA. And Horn started with Paul Horn, which is actually the PH in our logo. He founded Horn out of his garage in 1969, and the first tool we created as a company was actually for grooving out a part of a piston or an engine. And so he started that in his garage, and it's kind of where everything was founded. And in the mid-70s, Paul Horn designed and developed and patented a indexable insert which is our 312 system. And prior to that indexable insert, which we can basically swap out the insert from the operator, when you would use our solid tool, you'd have to use it, and the tolerances for piston manufacturer are very tight, so they would have to send them off, rework them, and send them back. Well, now with the indexable insert, they could swap it out at the machine and really lower the amount of time swapping out the tools. So then in the 90s, Lothar Horn, which was Paul Horn's son, entered the company. And really in the 90s, we had a push to expand globally. We kind of saw that to stay competitive in the market that we were in, we had to have a global presence. So through that, in 1998, Horn USA was established. Originally, we were just a sales office, so basically reselling and distributing tools from Paul Horn GmbH. And then to fast forward to today, Horn USA has about 120 employees, 40 machines, our own internal coding process. And globally, the Horn Group employs about 2,000 employees in about 70 different countries.
That is really fascinating. And I'm assuming when Mr. Horn started out the company, he was creating solutions for the automotive industry. But that has far exceeded what your applications and products are used for today.
Yeah, we are in, it's kind of hard to keep track how many verticals and industries we're in. But really anywhere where we stand out the most is when you have a process that needs precision. And we can go in there and really engineer a solution for a customer. So not just creating a tool or finding the right tool or that can do the job, but really re-looking at it to look at the manufacturing process and then develop a tool, a lot of times special custom tools for our customers to solve that niche that they're trying to solve. So it's really where Horn as a group has kind of embraced. It's not easy to do special tooling, and we've really, with our vast experience and really holding that knowledge and going after that market, we've learned a lot and have been able to use that to really separate us in the market.
Right. Well, it's amazing. And we're sitting here in your facility here in Franklin, Tennessee, right in Cool Springs, very easy to get to. Beautiful facility, Mike, that you have here. So
Thank you.
You all should be very proud of this. We're sitting in your training room, which is amazing as well. And right in front of us are all of the different tools and different applications. Obviously, I do this podcast. It's called Workforce 4.0. I'm very interested in how the future of work will look for manufacturing workforce.
Yeah.
We talk about that so much in the manufacturing space and online and all that. We talk about, Industry 4.0, is it a myth? Is it a buzzword? But here at Horn, you are really bringing those principles to life.
Yeah. Particularly for me, front office is my primary focus. And, I feel like Industry 4.0 has a reputation, and when people think of Industry 4.0, it's the manufacturing floor, sensors, machine connectivity, data from that process, right? Integrations. And I feel like, particularly in my role and where the organization as a whole is really focusing, is we have a heavy investment in custom solutions and engineering for our customers. And a lot of that can be really inefficient. We're doing custom tooling, and we're supporting those tools with our technical department. We're having to do quotations for those custom toolings, and a lot of that can be really inefficient. So we're actually have had a heavy focus on bringing Industry 4.0 to the front office to make those processes more efficient. So I feel like especially when you're trying to get buy-in and you're looking at ROI, you have to look at the organization and the core values and the focus. Where are we trying to head?
Right.
And I feel like, for us, particularly at Horn, I feel like uniquely it really starts at the top. Lothar Horn and our current owner, Marcus Horn, they actually both came from IT consulting backgrounds, and a big part of Industry 4.0 is technology infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and looking at those solutions. So I feel like that unique perspective of how technology can help us support our values and what we're trying to focus on, specifically engineering solutions and custom tools, is really interesting. And to have that support from the owners of your organization and that really good understanding is a unique thing we have here at Horn, and has really helped us when we look at things and solutions and
dependent on them.
Yeah, and it may be closed and it's not as flexible, or you don't like it 2 years later, or it's not completely solving your needs, and so it can be a little difficult. So I feel like that healthy foundation from them has really helped us get the support we've needed to invest in it, primarily people and technologies, to make it and help us get a return on investment, specifically in the front office areas, whether it's automating our order entry process, or to now we have developed a tool configuration application or process to help us configure and design custom toolings in a fraction of the time and have rules and parameters to match what our company can do. So I feel like technology can sometimes be overlooked at the importance and the impact it can have, and they've really had a good, healthy mindset of, one, not only what it could do for us, but how we should look at it as an organization, so we can have control of that process and not just lean on other companies, which I feel like today it's a very common thing. And you have a problem, hire a service to do it, and now you're tied to that core part of your business
Right.
is tied to that service.
It was a really amazing experience to go up there and kind of see all that and then see how it all plugs into the back production part of the plant as well. That was really cool to see that. From your perspective as the operations manager and being in that IT heavy background, how has the process of how you produce your tools and parts here at Horn, how has that evolved since the years you've been here?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I actually also have an IT consulting background, and that was actually my first introduction to Horn. And I think it was really one of the things that gravitated me in really being interested and being closer to Horn, more part of it. And, as we look at things in supporting what we're trying to do here, so even like, we mentioned one of our focuses is special tooling. And we look at how do we digitize, not just on the manufacturing floor, but in the front office.
Right.
I feel like in Industry 4.0 that gets forgotten. It's all about sensors and automation and AI and machining. But really interesting for us because we specialize in custom tooling, a lot of that knowledge and efficiency, there's so much opportunity in the front office with our engineers and our designers. So one of the things that we've invested heavily on is our tool configurator. We can develop a customized tool for a customer by just changing parameters, not drawing a tool from scratch from a CAD program. And so really focusing on that, looking at, okay, we want to be the best specials and customs tool manufacturer in the world. How do we support that with technology? And so looking at the infrastructure, the systems to make that faster. And like we were talking about on the tour, one of the demonstrations we gave at our technology days that just happened this month, we got our tool configurator and are now developing a 5-axis grinding solution to then get that data and information, create the grinding program, create the measurement program. So now we can automate and streamline that to our manufacturing as well. So configuring to manufacturing, streamlining that through technology, not having to wait for people to develop these programs themselves. So and we actually did that as a demonstration and let the people that were there for the presentation design a tool. We walked over to the factory and it was done being made by the time we got there. Yeah.
That's really cool. And what did that mean to be able to come in and kind of design a product and then walk over and there it is?
I think it's whether it's because they're hosted in Germany, and I think this year we had 35 or 4,000 attendees. And whether it's a student, a young kid, or a client even, seeing the innovations or even just the facilities and the intentionality behind everything we do, I think it's the same expression. Everybody's kind of in shock and awe, like, wow, you guys do this, or wow, I knew you guys did grooving, but I had no idea you did these 10, 15 other different things. And then when they see the intentionality behind what we're doing and also the investment, I feel like coming from the IT consulting world, everything was cloud this, pay for a service, get it here. And I got to spend some time talking with Marcus Horn, our current owner, third generation, and his concept of, hey, cloud's great, there's time and place, but this is why we self-develop. This is why we use open technologies, open source technologies. And it really had me rethink why we do certain things. And yeah, it's a heavier investment that requires a lot more knowledge and skill set on staff. But it is now your process, your technology, more flexibility. You're not depending on some outside service to run a core part of your business. And it really changed my focus and my mindset to understand it. It took a while to see it. We had some conversations with me not agreeing with exactly what he was saying. Pretty comical now. But I really see it now, and we're actually, at a global level, I feel like Horn is pretty unique in the collaboration we have globally. especially on the technology side. We have a lot of skill set here in the US. We have a great skill set in Germany and around the world, and we're collaborating globally. Say, hey, we have a problem here in the US. Do you guys have that there? This is how we think we should solve it. Let's collaborate, come up with a solution. And a lot of times we'll pilot it here in the US, or they'll pilot it there, and then we'll distribute it globally if it works. So it's really neat kind of back and forth. And I guess was really one of the main things that attracted me to Horn in the beginning of my consulting days.
That is really cool. And the technology days, there's something that you just started. Is that correct, or how long?
No.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so technology days happens every other year. And what it is it's hosted in Tübingen, Germany, where Paul Horn GmbH, that's where their plants are. And so we basically open the doors and invite our customers, partners. We have exhibitors that set up machines, and we invite them in the doors, and we hold presentations to explain what we are working on, what are some of the innovations, the technologies we're doing. And that was one of my favorite this year was the tool configurator, along with our grinding solution software that we self-developed to expedite custom tooling, going back to our core values. And that's where Horn really embraces, is that custom tooling area. Mm-hmm. So we're developing software to help support that and even increase our turnaround and our quality around our tools. But yeah, we open the doors, let people in. It's a 3-day event, and it's really neat to see people's reactions and their faces when they walk in. And it's extremely impressive facility. And then you tie that with our tooling and our wide range of tools that we offer, with the quality we offer. It's a pretty impressive.
Love to hear the success stories of collaboration across the board. That's something that I think we kind of all wish to see more of in the manufacturing world. Mm-hmm. But you've got to get down to the ROI and the meat and potatoes of that kind of investment as well. And for you all, it seems to really be paying off. And where do you think that you're seeing the biggest ROI?
I feel like for us, the biggest ROI we realize with Industry 4.0 initiatives is when we step back and look at our core values and our mission and our vision as an entity, as an organization. And like I mentioned, we really are embracing and focusing on customized engineered solutions, customized tooling. So when we look at what we're investing in those solutions, I feel like that just separates us even farther from what our competitors can provide, and ultimately the end product that the customer's getting. Many times we're able to generate a quote and a drawing faster than a competitor can deliver just a quote. So we're really investing highly into getting that to focus on those areas so that we can separate ourselves as an organization, as a company, and to help our customers.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about customized manufacturing, because that's long been touted as one of these things that Industry 4.0 could possibly bring more of. Mm-hmm. But, I think that's a big hurdle when you're, implementing Industry 4.0 strategies, technology, applications. It seems to be really hard to customize manufacturing efficiently mm-hmm. at all. I mean, if you want to do that, it's very small batch, or there's not a lot of mix there. So I think it's really cool what you were showing me earlier with some of your techniques and ways that you've mitigated that to overcome those challenges. If you were talking to other manufacturing companies that are interested in maybe applying some of those same techniques, or they're interested in starting on this journey towards Industry 4.0 and digital transformation, what are some tips that you would give them?
I feel like first, your first goal, because all these initiatives have some kind of investment, time, people, money, whatever it may be. So I feel like you need to work with your leadership to find out where's that company going. And maybe you already know that. Maybe they're they're good at communicating that throughout the organization. I think I would focus there because ultimately leadership is going to kind of decide the yeses and nos and where the investments should go. So if you can focus on where the organization going, what's important, you can then figure out, okay, where should we invest? Where should we start? And for us, I feel like just starting is a big deal. Just pick somewhere, start. Like I mentioned earlier, we at Horn specifically love to leverage open source technologies. It allows us to have more access to the tool. It's much more versatile than a closed source system. So we evaluate when we're looking for solutions. We have an evaluation process to say, is there an open source technology that exists that can do this for us today, or do we have to go and buy a piece of software, whatever it may be. But I think that's a great starting point, is find something, look and see, is there open source, because that's a lot of times it's free. It just takes time and effort to get that developed. And just start, pick something. It can be small, it can be large, but just start, pick an initiative and start developing it. And I think it's more like the snowball effect. You start with one project, get it done, then you realize and see, oh, there's another area for efficiency. Like I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of Industry 4.0 in the back with our digital solutions, and it's really creeping to the front office now. Especially, it's my area of focus. And one of the recent projects we had was a complaint system. We kind of kept everything in our ERP before, which is great to have that data there. But then we said, hey, we want to get more. We were having issues with collecting all communications, referencing back, getting all the data in one place. So we implemented a complaint system, which was built on open technologies, to really work with our ERP system to get certain information working between the systems, to build a better process around it. So, and through that now we have much more specific and granular data that helps us ultimately find systemic problems in our manufacturing, track how many quality problems we have with certain customers, and really diagnose why are people complaining about our products and what are the root causes so we can fix them ultimately in our manufacturing process.
It's really interesting. And it kind of gives that feeling of ownership too when you choose like open source processes and technology, because then you can go develop that and then it's yours, it's your IP. It adds value to the business long term. And then, it gives that ownership back to your customers, which are your ultimate stakeholders as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of it is you have to try and figure out and learn some hard lessons. Try investing in certain technologies or try to solve a certain problem and you realize, oh, it didn't quite have the impact that we were hoping, right? And I think you learn and you gain through those experiences, like, okay, Industry 4.0 and digitizing things can be everywhere. But how do we focus it? Where do we want to see an improvement and not just have, numbers on the wall for sake of having numbers on the wall? So I feel like for
Which
us,
are digital here.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, they are.
That was a big upgrade from the whiteboards. If you all are walking a plant floor and you're seeing the whiteboards every day, we have flat screens here at Horn, and they do the counting immediately. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it is, and I feel like you can get lost in that a little bit. And even myself, I think I can be a victim to that. You get so caught up in the numbers, but then I think you have to ask yourself, what's the value, right? Ultimately, we are a service company providing solutions for our customers. We just happen to use tooling for that avenue to solve the problem. So I think making sure you're not getting lost in the numbers and investing time, energy, and money into things that you're not able to calculate that return. So, and I feel like, even before my time here, I'm sure there was mistakes, but even here at Horn USA, I know, it's like, okay, we spent way too much time. You're not able to calculate that return. So, and I feel like, even before my time here, I'm sure there was mistakes, but even here at Horn USA, I know, it's like, okay, we spent way too much time on that. We should have been over here because that's clearly going to have a better impact for our customers, our employees, our efficiency, and so.
I think that the biggest takeaway from what you said there was really learning how to fail forward. and not being afraid to try something and fail. Do you feel like that's a competitive advantage that Horn USA maybe has over some of the larger companies out there or other traditional manufacturing companies that maybe move slower to adopt change?
I think so, and I think it's kind of what we've embraced. When we say we've kind of targeted and have gone after the custom solutions, there's a reason a lot of companies don't want anything to do with it. It's not easy. It requires people, experience, knowledge, a lot of mistakes, and us embracing that and kind of using that to separate us from everybody, I think that's just an example of other areas of the business that we've done the same thing. So, whether it's trying something and realizing we spent a month doing it and it's not what we like, so we're going to scrap it, that takes a lot of guts to do that. You spend a lot of time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears in developing something and you're not happy with it. So you're going to scrap it and say, we're going to go in this other direction. And so it's nice to know that, if you stand behind that because it's not meeting the quality or the standards of the organization, that you have the support of leadership. I think that's a pretty special solution there that kind of makes us what we are.
Absolutely. And I know we've talked a little bit too about open source programming and softwares and things like that, allow you all to have control over that process where you're not kind of outsourcing that service. But it also, there's a lot of trial and error in those platforms as well, developing all of that stuff. Is there anything that you look back on and you're like, oh, we did this, but maybe we want to, we should have gone a different direction, like you said?
I feel like there's pros and cons to every kind of solution you look at. And I feel like here at Horn, globally, when we are looking for solutions, often that's the first question. Is there something that exists today that preferably is open source, a well-supported project? Not all open source projects are treated or the same or treated equally. But is there a well-supported project that we could use and customize to make ours or introduce it into what we're trying to do so we can have more flexibility? We talked about with our machining and our concept about encapsulating our machines to protect them, because when you introduce IoT and connectivity, security is, the next big concern around. We just inherently made everything less secure by connecting it.
Right.
So that concept around encapsulating, we actually leaned heavily on open source technology to do that, and then built a in-house management layer. Because it's open and it has the flexibility and the support to do that, we can now build a management layer to manage hundreds and thousands of devices on our network, instead of leaning on a company to do it. We were just able to build it in-house. And so, I feel like, and there's a lot of open source software that we've tried, and then we realize it's just not going to have the type of quality and sustainability that we want. So then we will maybe move to let's look and see if somebody can do this, help us with this particularly. And I feel like, for especially like our order automation, we leaned heavily on a outside company to help us achieve that, because there's a lot of AI involved and a lot of processing and logic that would take us longer to develop in-house, and there wasn't something existing for that.
I really appreciate that and this conversation. I want to kind of ask a little bit more about the future of work from your perspective.
Sure.
On our tour, and one of the things that I was noticing was that everything is very efficient, first of all, but it's pretty autonomous, for the most part. But then you have these big areas for your workforce, and I think you mentioned even one area you were going to turn into just an entire quality department, because obviously that's a huge part of your business and your product here. How do you see that shift moving as we integrate more Industry 4.0, we'll say jobs, that kind of thing, into our manufacturing policies or practices?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question. And as you introduce AI and automation, it's usually the first question that gets brought up is what jobs I know are tied to that. And, I feel like the attitude and the thoughts behind these automations isn't to replace people. I think that can be a slippery slope to go down is, hey, let's create this automation of this thing so we can not have to hire these people. Ultimately, the people in our experience are what have made Horn what we are today. And what we're trying to do is make these processes that are managed by people more efficient and less room for error, more consistent. And so I feel like every single project we've gone down, and a good example is our order entry. You think something so simple, get an order entered into a system. Well, when you get, 1,000 orders a day, it can get a little dicey to have people entering these orders. We implemented a project to automate that, and we have just reused that time. It was our customer service team that was doing that, and now they are reusing that time for other customer service activities, not to remove jobs or, So that was the main focus around that, and so, yeah.
No, that's really cool. I love that use case for that, as well as going on to the floor in your front office and seeing everyone working there. And, you kind of mentioned that a couple of your employees, they started out here at Horn as machinists, and now they're designing custom order tools for customers. So yeah. I think that's really cool, and it shows obvious career pathing.
Yeah. We have quite a bit of movement, I feel like, in our organization. And, we do have people that they start off as a operator on a machine and work their way through, whether they want something different or they're growing as an employee and their skill set. We love to see that. And we actually have a very uniquely long tenure here at Horn. I think in the next 4 or 5 years, we have like 8 people going on 15 or 20 year anniversaries, which is really unique. But I think that's part of the recipe that makes it a good environment for people.
Interesting. Very cool. And I know that we're having this conversation today in your brand new training facility, which is really cool. If you're watching, you can definitely see the CNC machine behind me. And then if you were in the room, you would see kind of multiple units of different types of CNC machines. And then this really cool table that has a very good demonstration of tools and products that Horn USA makes. And I know that this conversation is one of 3 that I'm going to have with you all at Horn. So this has really been fun. And this is focused more on process. But I really want to talk to you a little bit more about your people as well. And a big question from an operations management standpoint is when you're thinking about empowering your frontline workforce and Industry 4.0, and how does that technology enable people as we progress in manufacturing and we get more technical applications and we adopt more software and we bring machines online and we have more autonomy. Yeah. How does that affect the frontline workforce in your opinion, and how are those jobs going to evolve in the future?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like a lot of times when you're talking about automation, AI, there's the next question from the employees, what about my job? And I think here specifically, and I think when you're trying to achieve less people through Industry 4.0 or automation, can be a dangerous slope because the people and the experience and the knowledge are what got your company to where you are today in most cases. And I think that's really what we embrace here at Horn. We have we have a lot of employees with 15, 20 years of experience of working and making Horn product. We don't want to lose that. We actually want to embrace that. And a lot of times what we see when we introduce a new process that's more efficient, streamlined, digitized, people can spend more time looking at things maybe a little more analytically, more strategically and saying, oh, this is really interesting. And I've seen that a lot with one of the solutions we've done this year with our complaint system. It used to be trying to manage the complaints and the data, the information and the communication, and we streamlined all that, made it easier. Now we're getting more granular data out of our complaint system, so we can analyze it, say, what are people complaining about? From those complaints, what are the root causes? Where can we improve our manufacturing process? What issues are we having? And we can look at that to really correct systemic problems and continuously improve as a company.
Right. So instead of your customer service folks spending all of their time, fulfilling orders or, tickets or whatever, they're able to spend that more one-on-one people-oriented time with your customer base.
Yeah, and it's been really neat to see specifically with that example kind of where the position of that person. They used to view things and just kind of process, get things moving, and now they have more time to stop and access to information to think, oh, that's really interesting. We should try to solve that because that keeps being a problem. So they're actually kind of, won't say maturing, but looking at issues a little differently than they did before because they have access to the information. So it's really, I feel like it's empowering a lot of our employees to operate at a different level that's more beneficial for the organization.
Well, it is more analytical, and it gives them a little bit more ownership as employees as well, because you're allowing them to take these complex problems that the customers are experiencing, and instead of, just offering some standard Band-Aid solution, it's allowing them the time to really think about it. Okay, well, how can we actually fix this? And then I'm sure there's some sort of process where they deliver that information back to your engineers or your production staff and all of that, and then you're able to make necessary changes from there.
Yeah, that's been one of the, in the last few years, a big push has been trying to offer some organizational transparency. And so we have all this information spread out, and we've been trying to collect it and provide it in a more visual way to all of our leaders in our company. And that could be just a customer service person, or that could be a supervisor or manager. They can look and see how a department is impacting their department and see and kind of connect dots. So not trying to silo information, but really make it more visual and spread it across the company, because we have, people are our greatest asset here at Horn. And so we want to empower people to looking and using that information to make us better.
Do you feel like that's elevated the level of your workforce?
I do, especially, I feel like some people that have had access to this that have not had it before for whatever reason, it didn't exist. I feel like they're really thinking differently and trying to find solutions in a different way for problems, because now they can see it. They can connect the dots. And so I feel like really empowering them to get out of their little box. And
right.
If they want to solve it and go try to make it better and fix it, go for it.
What are some best practices or tips that you've learned along the way that you could share with other companies that maybe they want to break those silos down internally in their own operations, on how they can get started? What are some good, qualifying metrics along the way? Like, how do we know this is working and we're doing a good job with that?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times, especially when we're looking at streamlining or trying to get data or bringing down silos, it's usually people asking questions.
Right.
So when people, whether it's our CEO or somebody in a department, customer service, technical, doesn't matter, ask a question and I don't know. Usually don't like that. So I want to figure out, say, okay, that's a good question. We should measure that, because that can improve this process or the quality of our product or whatever it may be. So I feel like if you listen really well, your employees and the people in your organization will help feed that. And, I've been with Horn for 3 years now, and I feel like every day I have more questions. So it really drives me and my teams to try to get answers to those questions so we can improve.
Excellent. Yeah, that's always a big topic of conversation, I think, when we're having workforce-related conversations a lot, is we see all these silos, right, in your operations and in between your staff. And your front line even is, in a normal manufacturing facility, is a very different world than what I've experienced today here at Horn. So breaking down those silos and really creating that open communication, open transparency organization is so crucial, but I think it's so hard for a lot of companies to implement.
Yeah.
You all seem to be really excelling at this. In fact, when we were on the tour earlier, we were talking a lot about expansion, which is always great news for your operations here. But we were talking about how there's kind of this space on the floor where you're going to make that a big quality department. And I think that's really interesting because, it seems like you're shifting a lot of these roles that maybe would be kind of hourly, or maybe they would kind of be more mundane. You're really putting a lot of emphasis on these higher skilled and higher paying roles here at Horn.
Yeah, I feel like specifically with quality, I feel like it's pretty easy to shove them in a room and here's your equipment and do your job and process parts, right? And so as we grow as an organization here, specifically at Horn USA, when we're looking at moving offices or departments around, that was one of the key goals, was giving quality more equipment and more room to perform their job.
Right.
Quality is huge for us here at Horn. So the more we can do that, and the more complexity we can get with those processes and that machinery and the people there, it only benefits us. So yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. What's your favorite part of the process, and something maybe that you personally had a hand in helping to create here?
I feel like for me, one of the things I've had the most enjoyment with, it was really hard when I started here to get access to information. People could get it, but it was a lot of Excel sheets. It's a lot of people pulling numbers different ways, and it was really frustrating. And I personally don't like people saying, well, I feel like it's doing this,
right,
or I feel like this is how much percentage we're doing. And I'm like, So it usually drove me or leading a project, a team of people to say, hey, let's try to get that. How can we get this information? Do we have to change a process? And a lot of times that's what it took, is, okay, we're not collecting it. So let's develop a process, say, let's collect it. Let's develop a system to work that process, to store the data and to make sure the process is performing like we want it. And then we get the data to say, okay, this is really what's happening in that area of the business. And I feel like that's a lot of satisfaction for me personally, because for as long as we've been a company, everybody's kind of guessed what that number is, and now we can say, hey, here it is, it's better or worse, or hey, we have some improvement to do, or whatever it may be. So that's a lot of satisfaction for me when we're working through a problem or a situation.
Well, I feel like it's a great morale booster as well, because you have a solid number you can go by. There's not a lot of guessing, and it builds confidence throughout your organization.
Yeah, and I feel like ultimately it allows us to make better, more strategic decisions.
Right.
When you know, and continuous improvements, I feel like is something we really like to strive and push for here at Horn USA. And when you make a change, what the effect of that change is, and we're able to measure that a lot more accurately and quicker. So if we make a change in our quoting process, we can say, okay, did we do more? Did we do less? Did we get a better capture rate? What is it? We can capture that really quickly now to see how that change impacted the result we were hoping to get. Instead of, we changed it, we think it's doing better, right? Yeah.
Well, Michael, I appreciate your time today. I know you're super busy as the operations manager here. You've got so many irons in the fire. This has been such a privilege and an honor for me to be here today with you all, and thank you so much for the tour. For those that are listening to the podcast today, maybe they want to reach out.
Yeah.
Could you share a good contact method?
Best way is our website, which is horn-group.com/US. Should redirect you there automatically, but has all of our social media. We're on LinkedIn as well, but that would be the best way to reach out and get a hold of us.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Michael, and to everyone listening in on this special edition of Workforce 4.0 today. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know we've talked a little bit too about open source programming and softwares and things like that, that, allow you all to have control over that process where you're not kind of outsourcing that service. But it also, there's a lot of trial and error in those platforms as well, developing all of that stuff. Is there anything that you look back on and you're like, oh, we did this, but maybe we want to, we should have gone a different direction, like you said?
I feel like there's pros and cons to every kind of solution you look at. And I feel like here at Horn, globally, when we are looking for solutions, often that's the first question. Is there something that exists today that preferably is open source, a well-supported project? Not all open source projects are treated or the same or treated equally. But is there a well-supported project that we could use and customize to make ours or introduce it into what we're trying to do so we can have more flexibility? We talked about with our machining and our concept about encapsulating our machines to protect them, because when you introduce IoT and connectivity, security is, the next big concern around. We just inherently made everything less secure by connecting it.
Right.
So
yes.
Yeah, so that concept around encapsulating, we actually leaned heavily on open source technology to do that, and then built a in-house management layer. Because it's open and it has the flexibility and the support to do that, we can now build a management layer to manage hundreds and thousands of devices on our network, instead of leaning on a company to do it. We were just able to build it in-house. And so, I feel like, and there's a lot of open source software that we've tried, and we realize it's just not going to have the type of quality and sustainability that we want. So then we will maybe move to okay, let's look and see if somebody can do this, help us with this particularly. And I feel like, for especially like our order automation, we leaned heavily on an outside company to help us achieve that, because there's a lot of AI involved and a lot of processing and logic that would take us longer to develop in-house, and there wasn't something existing for that.
Right.